Hello again, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the Make Mental podcast. Today we have on, once again, a very, very fantastic guest, Jonathan Sprinkles. He is a keynote speaker, a best-selling author, a connectologist, which that term just is fantastic. We'll let him explain that here in a little bit. We have a dad, we have a leader, we have an inspirer. But what stood out to me amongst all those awards is we just have a down to earth human being. And I think I said all those awards. I didn't list any yet, but there are quite a few. So I will list maybe a quick four here that have to do with his public speaking abilities, which is the realm I see him in or interact with him in the most. So he was the winner of the Emerging 10 Award by the HMSDC. He was the winner of the Pinnacle Award by the HCCC. He was the Speaker of the Year by the APCA, and he was the winner of the Mentor of the Year by the Disney Dreamers Academy. And like I said, the list could go on and on and on. I think former TV personality. I mean, you name it, Jonathan has some sort of experience. But we are so blessed to have him here on the podcast to share some wisdom with you all, specifically pertaining his new book. Once again, I will let him explain what that's all about to you here in just a second. But Jonathan, thank you so much for your willingness to join us.
Pleasure to be here. We finally made it happen.
I know. Behind the scenes here, we were going back for quite a while. And one question I do have for Jonathan, again, broken record me, we will get into it, I promise, is how he was able to set such personal boundaries without being rude, for lack of better terms. I never felt neglected. I never felt ignored, and I felt heard and understood, but he gave himself the time and energy that he needed to be able to dedicate this podcast to us and give us his full self. So took about 3-4 months, I want to say. Does that seem like the right timeline?
That actually, because I said, oh, it should be ready about this time. I'll be ready about that time. And then things just kept going further and further back. Just one delay after complication, after what the heck moment. And then finally it happened.
Oh, and I say this in the nicest way possible. It is fantastic to hear you say that. What the heck moment, complication, as someone who appears to have a lot of things figured out. I think it's important for all of our listeners to know that sometimes the grass isn't always greener, but as long as you push through, keep mowing the grass, keep fertilizing the grass, for lack of better terms, it'll still grow. But I do want to start off by kind of asking you to introduce yourself. I always like to do that and let the guests tell our audience who they are in their words and not just me listing awards and accolades, because as always, our guests are so much more than their achievements.
I work with high-performing people. That means people from athletes to Oscar winners to Grammy winners, Hall of Famers, all the way to student athletes and everywhere in between. But the one golden thread is I work with people who want to use the power of connection to bring out the best in themselves and those around them. That's what a connectologist is, someone who inspires people to do more than they thought was possible by making them feel seen, safe, and celebrated.
Yeah, wonderfully put. Seen, self. Wow, I had trouble with that too. Seen and celebrated. A little tongue twister here for us today. But I think that is important, right? Community, storytelling, healing, encouragement. That's what we're all about over here. So it's no wonder why we chose you and we're willing to wait those 3 times 2 months to get you on. But your new book, I had the privilege of being able to download it on Audible. And wow, I usually have a long, boring 4-hour drive to my girlfriend's house. No offense. I love the destination. That's one of the times that I don't necessarily love the journey. But listening to it really, really made me enjoy the journey. You know, it wasn't the same music I put on. It was just a switch up, and it spoke to me at a time that I think I needed it and didn't realize it. Is that why you wrote it? because you felt like you needed to hear something yourself, or is it truly because you just enjoy what you do for a living and wanted to
So first
continue
off,
to
thank you for
inspire
getting
and
the
lead?
book. The book Get Off Your Butt and Make It Happen was originally written over 10 years ago, and it was the best that I could do at the time. I knew that I had a lot of things that I wanted to say, but I wasn't sure how to package them. I was trying to still figure myself out, even. I've been in my career for a long time, but I was still trying to figure out where do I want to go next. And I had books that at the time were on very specific things, but I wanted the book that people could listen to or at the time read. And you could go from cover to cover and feel like it was a conversation, like it was a hug from your best friend when you needed it most. And that was the book at the time that I was most proud of. But just like everything else, high achievers, what do? We finish it and then move on to the next thing. But then I picked the book up years later and said, man, this is actually really good stuff. I want to give this a second life. This is too good for me to just allow to just sit on the shelf. And I said, you know what? I want to make this my first audiobook. And I added some more things because it had been so long. There was the 10-year anniversary of it. And I wanted to make sure that because I've changed and because times have changed, the way in which I'd approach things have changed. I wanted to make sure, kind of like an old building, that you really appreciate the architecture and the art behind it, but then also give it a few modern updates and do that. So I
Hmm.
broke all the rules. And that's what I love most about it. That's why the project took so long. Why I couldn't tell you, okay, it's ready now, because I was breaking all the rules. I put music in there. I use my voice a lot differently than most people are used to. I'll whisper sometimes. You wonder, what did he just say? Well, I'm talking to your conscious mind and your unconscious mind by going directly the uh, into your mind, telling you things like, because you can do it, because you do deserve it. I'm encouraging you in ways that stick much longer than a normal book. And because I'm able to talk to you versus just read, where you put your own voice in there, I was able to do so many great things that the digital world affords us to do. So the book is really all about this. It's all about, what would your life look like if you stopped second guessing yourself? What would your life look like if you stopped saying, I want to, but it would be great, but man, that would be awesome, but I don't have time, but I don't have money, but I don't think I'm the one to do it. And we tend to shoot ourselves down. And this is actually a trait of high performers. High performers have very high um, confidence in their own beliefs, but oftentimes their self esteem takes a big blow. So, confidence means, if you look at the word confidence, CONFIDENCE, if you look at the first 7 letters of it, it's confide. Confide is what you tell yourself about yourself. Confidence is a story. If we can break it down this way, confidence is trust. How much do you trust yourself in this area? So, for example, you may trust yourself on the field or the court or the pool or at the tournament or the match or the meet or whatever you call it, but you may not trust yourself in a certain class. You may not trust yourself to make the right decisions when you're by yourself. You may not trust yourself to make the right decisions when the pressure is on. And so, what we've noticed about high performers specifically, which is why I wrote this book, because it was such a great prescription for people who are pushing themselves to another level, is that there's such a duality. And this is a conversation that no one else is having. No one else is having the conversation about, how do I feel on top of the world in half my day, and then underneath the world in the other half of the day? How is it that I could feel like I can do anything but that? That's why we have that conversation.
Go Global is a free flowing technology company that handcrafts, embellishes, and manufactures garments and accessories. Designed on the principles of people, places, and possibilities, Go Global reimagines fashion and is inspired by you, the people of the world. Yeah, and I, one, appreciate the fact that you didn't just stick with what you had 10 years ago, because obviously, like you said, so much change has happened, so much growth. rediscovering has happened in your own life, that the delivery was spot on. I think what's funny enough is like all the messages you had in there, we're not going to give them all away. You have to download the book. But the one that stuck with me the most wasn't even a title of a chapter, wasn't even an analogy. It was you laughed at yourself and you said, "What the heck was I thinking?" I think those were your exact words. You said, "What was I thinking back then?" But I'm going to leave that anyway because that was me, and that's okay. What what was the decision to leave that in there? I mean, that's beautiful.
So yeah, I think one of the times when I was laughing at myself was I wrote the line something like something is harder to find than a virgin. Oh, people who take responsibility are harder to find than a virgin on a reality show.
Yes, and then you also referenced like uh something with a you stepped on a scale and it was like 17 pounds higher and you had junk in the trunk and you were like, what
Yeah,
was I
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about?
So let's just go back and revisit it. First off, I'm a closet comedian. I always try to make a joke wherever I can, and that's just who I am. There are some things that you do as you get older and you just evolve a little bit. Your comedy changes. But at the time, I was total cornball, and I said, "All right, well, here's my joke. I thought it was funny, but now I look back and go, oh my gosh, what was I thinking?" But there's something to be said about that. This is part of that original architecture that we wanted to preserve. So I want to talk about that, but then I'll talk about what you just mentioned as well, because there was something else that I took out that you wouldn't know about unless you read the original book. So I'll talk about both. Um, what I wanted to do was be all of who I am. Every single time I looked at the new book, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so judged. I'm going to have so many people tell me, I don't like this, or I didn't know this about you, or I don't think that they're going to resonate the way that I would like them to. And so I felt almost like I had to apologize at first to say, look, I want to let you know I'm different. I don't always talk like this anymore, but this is how things were, which leads me to what you just mentioned. There was a comment, several of them that I made about weight. Now, just for context, when I graduated high school, I was 5'10", 135 pounds. So I'm 6 feet tall now. I grew a couple more inches, finally got to the six club. And then I definitely am not 135 pounds anymore. I've, let's just say, filled out a little bit. Well, for for me at the time, being 17 pounds overweight was a big deal. Think about it. If my reference was like 150, 175 pounds, 17 pounds is like 10% of my whole overall body weight there, right? So for me, 17 pounds was huge. Since then, of course, times have evolved. My body, I've evolved. And there are people who say, I wish I could get 17 pounds overweight. I wish I could get down that far. There are people who are 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 pounds overweight. Well, with more life experience, now I understand that people have a broader spectrum of issues than just being just 17 pounds overweight. And more importantly, there are oftentimes reasons why people carry weight that are beyond them just being lazy or liking food too much or not working out. At the time, my narrow thinking only saw it one way. And so I would say things that were very matter of fact, like this is how it is. So as I read this back and then I recorded it, I listened to it and I said, this feels a lot like shaming. And somebody could feel very turned off or even hurt if I am talking about my weight in a way that is so demeaning. Even though I'm talking about myself, I didn't want to do that. So there were some things that I actually took out and rephrased and modernized a great deal. This is part of the architecture having the more modern appeal to it. I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And we're in a different time now where people just talk differently. We're a lot more
Mm.
conscientious of people's differences. At the time, I did what people would do back when the book was originally written, but now things are very different, and you'll see a more mature approach to the book and how I'm getting my point across. I still have some very strong opinions. I still believe some things. I still believe in the basics. If you don't put in the work, you don't get the reward. And sometimes we're just lazy, period. Sometimes we just don't want it, period. And somebody needs to say it, and I went ahead and said it. But what I don't have to do is put my finger in your face the whole time when I'm saying it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I do very specifically remember a moment in the book where you talk about that right before you go on to a TV show. But again, we're not going to give it all away. If you want to hear that part, you might have to just listen to the book. But I am noticing a pattern here of a little bit of perspective, like a now and then, like a before, and I'm not going to say an after because you're still it's a during, like a before and during now. And you reference it as like respecting the architecture of an older building. Is that something that you obviously took note of when you were writing the book? But what point did you want the listeners, or when you put on your other hat, your coaching hat, at what point did you want your clients or those people that look to you to kind of look at themselves as the older building and say, okay, this was me 10 years ago. Let's respect, let's appreciate that. Let's keep some of it here. But but what needs to change for me to get off my butt?
And it's really about the journey. It's about understanding that everybody has a story. Nobody should ever be judged by their worst day. No one should ever be judged by their worst decision. That's just what it is. I don't believe in the word regret. I just don't. I don't have very many regrets in my life. If the only regrets that I have would be a couple of instances in which I just didn't treat people very well. Sometimes I was trying to impress friends or some really silly, immature reason. But the only things that I look back on and regret are the things that may have had an impact on other human beings. But as far as the conversation with ourselves, especially for student athletes and high performers, you got to be able to take it all. One of the things that I've started to take to that world when I talk with NCAA events is tell yourself the truth, but tell yourself the whole truth, because two things can be true at the same time. No, you didn't win, but you did prepare yourself to win. No, you may not have the number, but you are moving yourself forward. Because I love this saying. They said, if you use it right, adversity will buy you a ticket to a place that you couldn't have gone any other way. So that's part of telling yourself the whole truth. That's part of helping yourself understand that, yes, you may have come from a place of scarcity or lack or loss, but that, when you look at it, is losing really a loss? Was it really something bad? Or was it just the precursor to the gain? I don't know anybody who's had lasting success who didn't have to go through some season of loss in order to appreciate what they have. So that's part of being able to look at yourself as a whole picture and say, yes, that is who I was then. That is what I did then. And what I learned from it is who I become now and what I do now. So at no point are we ever stuck or bound or requiring judgment for who we were at this time, as long as we choose to evolve as people.
Yeah, so wonderfully put. And I can't remember exactly the guest that I spoke to. I think we were talking about snow globes, and I'll tell you why. Because, like you said, no one has lasting success, at least that we know of. And if you have had that formula happen, let us know, please. I'd be interested to pick your brain. However, struggle is inevitable. But the purpose of a snow globe and the beauty of a snow globe is to be shaken. When it sits there on the shelf by itself, it's not fulfilling its true purpose. Sure, it looks pretty. Sure, it might be perfect on the shelf in that spot. But you really don't get to see the beauty of the snow globe until it's shaken up and the whatever's in there starts fluffing down. Do you think it's essential for people to have a period of struggle, or do you think it's just something that is going to happen no matter what? So buckle in and let's
Duke
get through it.
basketball coach Mike Krzyzewski said, there are things that are available and accessible to you. He said, truthfully, you don't have to do any of them, but you also don't have to win. But if you want to win, you have to do all of them. So, no, you don't have to struggle. You can avoid struggle your whole life. You can avoid tough times, challenges, failure, loss, insecurity. You can avoid all those things, but you will never get any of the things that they serve you with. And that was part of why I closed the book the way that I did.
Mm.
Somebody just called me the other day with the review. He said, "Man, chapter 7 really hit me in a very specific way." I talk very intimately about some of the losses in my life, losing my father as a teen, as well as having a challenging relationship with a very critical mother. My mom was all I had, and yet she was still very critical because her mother was very critical of her. And so you go back further into it, and this is why it's important that we always consider the source. For those who have coaches, bosses, trainers, friends, consider the source and understand their map. Because if you buy into someone's opinion, you also buy into the lifestyle that that opinion creates. So always consider the source. Do they have the type of map that suggests that their opinion is not just true, but is it also balanced? Can they see both sides? And are they saying this in a way that resonates with you? So understanding that, it really helps you to understand why you have to be shaken up sometimes. But when you look at what shaken up means, what that feels like never feels good. But when you learn how to trust the process, you're going to say that magic phrase, something good is going to come from this. Something good is going to come from this. If you look at the book Happiness Advantage, it talks about people who are happy by choice. And he talks about how, based on part of our brain called the reticular activation system, our brain will focus on what we choose for it to see. And so when you're being shaken and you say, "Oh, this is the worst. Oh, I'm being cursed. Oh, my life is dead. Oh, I'm done. I'm done. This is it. I can't make it." Well, that's what you're going to see. But when you focus on that snow globe being shaken up, saying, "There's some things that are just supposed to be uprooted from my life." This is the expression that I use that was provided for me. Was It's not so much of a shaking, but I tend to look at it as a pruning season. Like if you ever have been in a garden, you have to cut some things off for the bigger fruits to grow. You have to cut off the dead part in order for the bigger, more lush parts to grow. So when we're being pruned, what happens? It hurts. When some people are being shaken out of our lives, it hurts. Some old thoughts,
Mm.
beliefs being shaken out of our lives and cut away, it hurts. I'm used to it. This makes me feel comfortable. But when you see what comes from it afterwards, you learn how to trust the process, and you learn how to believe that something good is coming from this. So even this shaking up, even this pruning, even this sense of being disturbed right now, there's something that is being built in me that I need for my next level.
So much just pure good that was said there. Again, I'm at a loss for words at the moment, but because my brain is just churning and thinking and constantly curious about what you're saying, and two major things came to mind for me. One, because I'm not quite removed from that athlete mentality. I don't know if I ever will be. That's for the journey to decide. But the thought of confidence and trust interlocking, right? You don't get to be a college athlete without some sort of skill, some sort of confidence, some sort of trust, even if it doesn't feel like it. Do some dig deeping. Dig deeping, deep digging. It is there, um, but it didn't just show up. Chances are you've been playing for 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 20, depending on where you are in your college journey, years, right? You've missed numerous shots. You've missed a lap time. You've like missed a save. Whatever you do in your sport, you've failed. You've been shaken up. You've won games that you didn't think you were supposed to win. Like you've done the shaking, right? It takes time and patience and a conscious effort for you to draw that line between confidence and trust. I know I didn't get confidence to take the PKs for my team until I had taken, or made rather, 20. The whole first 20, I wasn't confident enough, but I got off my butt and I did it, right? A little I'll hype up myself in that sense, is like, yes, your book is helping me do this outside of sports now, which is going to happen for athletes in their own right. But can we start to think about it before we necessarily get there? That's what listening to the chapters of your book, like, I think, again, I talk about this a lot. I think COVID was so paramount in my journey, and it was horrible in a lot of ways, but it was also so teaching in a lot of ways, because I had lost, like so many other athletes, a sport for a season before I was meant to not have it in my life. That it allowed me the time to just be where my feet are, get off my butt, and make something happen. But the second thing I wanted to talk about, when I was listening to you talk, is I remember where I was on my trip during
Mm.
each chapter of your book. That's how good this book is. I don't know why. I can draw the visuals to the exit signs to whatever. Chapter 7, I was looking for a place to pee, to be straight up. I had to go bad, right? I was done with my Dunkin'. I had some water, because in the back of my head, my girlfriend's like, if you're gonna drink coffee, make sure you drink water. God bless her for that. She's my water calculator, which is fantastic. You're more than my water calculator if you're listening, girlfriend. But um, I was in Binghamton. I was halfway home, and I was like, man, I gotta pee. So I was hyper focused on your book, right? I pull off the exit, and then you start talking about your family, your parents. But the one thing I couldn't get out of my head was
Mm.
manage the marshmallows. Can you explain managing marshmallows and what the heck that means, and what we do when they turn into s'mores? Because I'm very excited for
Well,
this
let's go back. Researcher Sonny Michel did an experiment. He was from Stanford University. It was called the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment, and he took young people and he told them, "I will give you a marshmallow, but I tell you what, I've got to leave. If you can just not eat this marshmallow until I get back, I'll give you two marshmallows." Of course, the kids didn't know, but he goes and stands behind uh, what is it, a two-way mirror, and they observe with cameras and everything, and they see the kids. You can actually Google it. It is hilarious. You see the kids. They've redone this marshmallow experiment many times. The kids are like, they'll kiss the marshmallow, they'll talk to it, they'll do anything just to keep their minds going. And they discovered that those who were able to abstain from that marshmallow for the 10 to 15 minutes that he was gone, that they did better in school, they did better in their career, they made more money, they had successful marriages, they did better in every measurable area of their life. So the lesson in this was about being able to have deferred gratification and to build up that muscle, how important it is for your mental health in order for you to build up that I don't have to give in to every impulse. I don't have to be whatever I feel right now. So yes, there is a time where you do want to be where your feet are. You do want to be present. And so how do you know the difference? Well, the way I explain it, now this will be in a future project that I will do, but I'll give it to you now. There's times where you want to be in the moment, and then there are times you need to be above the moment. Being in the moment, Caleb tells me, "Hey, I got in a car accident, or I just had this situation, or I just got married, I just proposed to my girlfriend, or I'm just really feeling anxious right now." I need to be in the moment. I need to be locked in. Or I
or
gotta
I gotta
pee,
or I gotta
right?
pee
Well,
or
that's
I
your
gotta pee.
moment. I don't want to be anywhere in that moment.
Yeah, we don't need. I don't know why I share. This is one of those things where if I do a book, or if I do like a highlight reel, I'm gonna be Jonathan coming out and be like, "Why did I think I was funny?" But I digress. Keep going.
But you know what? Go with it. It's your moment. It's right there. Um, so you want to be in the moment when you're with people, when you're talking about being there with or for people. You want to be in the moment. And then other times you need to be above the moment, and you need to ask yourself, and then what? Okay, if I do this, and then what? If I say this, and then what? If I take this shortcut, and then what? Where you're looking at the long-term ramifications of what we're doing. So there's two different ways to think. One is in the moment, the other is above the moment. And those people who are able to be above the moment tend to do much better in everything. Hey, we all get tempted with different things just based on what your thing might be. Mine might be different from yours, but we all get tempted. It might be anywhere from food to online shopping, or things you could, again, go A to Z. Whatever your thing is, we all know what temptation feels like. Being able to elevate that muscle gives you so much more confidence and trust in yourself. And then no matter what experience you're having, you're able to have stronger mental health, because you say, you know what, I understand that this is where I am, but it's not where I'm going to be. I trust that I know what to do. I trust that I can get through this. Or I trust how to tap into people who do, even if I don't have the answers. And that's strength too. Borrowed strength is still strength. And so that's where you're able to say, I know I am not going to be made in this moment by what I feel. And that's where a lot of times we get tripped up. And so the unconscious mind says, this is too much. I don't believe that we're going to be successful on the next level. So I'm going to self sabotage us somehow. For some reason, you just can't seem to make that practice work. Somehow you just can't make that shot, that swing just won't be straight anymore. Or for some reason, those corner kicks they're just not like they used to be. That's a subconscious sign that you have an inner conflict, and you don't trust yourself about what would happen if you were able to be successful on a higher level. And that's by just simply managing those marshmallows, saying, I know that I was faithful in this, and now I can be successful over all that.
Yeah, manage the
That's
marshmallows and
right.
get to the s'more type thing. I think it's a fantastic point, and I don't want that part of the book to be missed if people don't have the resources to download it. Again, I will say it throughout the remainder of this episode. You need to download it. You do, just quite simply. And I don't know if this helps anyone access the book, but I don't know if it ended. At least last month there was a free trial period. So at the very least, download it, get the free trial period, and just hear what Jonathan has to say. Because I'm telling you right now, if I can remember exactly where I was on a trip that usually is boring to me, it's enough to stick with me. But oh, we're back. All right, we
Sorry, I
found
think
him
we had a
again.
little stall.
But my question to you is, we might be so far in our habits, good or bad. We might be so far into our impulses and into our, like you said, our online shopping, because I do love my Amazon. How do we realize what's the first step to awareness that, oh my gosh, I just spent $150 this month on wants?
And we all know what our thing is. We know where our tickle spots are. We know where we like to go whenever things aren't feeling the way we want them to. So sometimes, let's say, for example, it's food, and people will say, oh my gosh, I feel so bad. I should eat something. Or, hey, I feel so good. I should eat something. Or it can be working out, and it can be anything. The question becomes, when I feel strongly, what urge comes up? That's usually the best indicator that'll tell you. I know I can tell you I'm for sure an emotional eater. I'm usually pretty disciplined about some things, but when I feel really good, I want to celebrate, have a big accomplishment. Hey, doesn't matter. Let's go. Calories be damned. Let's go. Right? Sugar be damned. Let's go. Or if I just feel really, really bad, you know what? Give me those French fries. Yes, double, extra, biggie. That is just how I am. And so I have to know that, and I also have to be willing to redirect and go in a different direction, because everything, this is what really got to me. I realized that everything that we do, everything that we choose, is an attempt to meet a need on the inside. And the need that I might be having is, I'm really sad, or I feel rejected. This need that I might be meeting is, I want to feel connected to someone else. My father, whenever I have a really big sports game, big basketball game, or baseball, having him there at the time was really big. So that connection and that celebration was really important. And at least I can understand what need I'm looking to meet. Now, when it comes to how to redirect that, look, I get frustrated too. I drive and can get some kind of way in traffic too. Or if my technology fades and it's a big moment, I can get some kind of way too. But what I'm learning to do is, I'm learning that, um, what you complain about or how you try to solve a problem reveals to you who you believe is in control. So if I'm really upset and really frustrated, it means that my mind is on my abilities, not my faith. And this is a daily reminder. There's a daily practice that I have to make to allow myself to say, all right, let me go first to my breathing. Second, I need to say, hey, for me, this is my values. This is my to say, hey, God's got it. It wouldn't happen if it wasn't supposed to. Okay, God's got it. And in saying God's got it, it's also saying God's got me. And somehow this is going to work out. Flight things get crazy, travel, somebody rejects me or they ghost me or what have you, business and life. Hey, God's got it. Something better is going to come through this. And that is the belief system that underrides or undermines everything that I do in life. And that's why some of the decisions I make can just be a little more consistent. That's what I'm after. I just want to be consistent. Caleb, I want to be that guy when this interview is over that I am in front of your millions upon millions of listeners. I want to be the same guy to my son that I am to my audiences. I want him to say, no, I actually know more about what a good guy he is and how he treats people and how he responds than you ever will. And I'm telling you that he really does live this life. And so that for me is really the bigger picture and how to work on being as emotionally triggered. Trust me, it happens sometimes, but when you have calm inside your body, that's what's going to come out in moments of chaos.
Yeah, and I appreciate that too. The search for calmness, and I know I know you've said it before. I know a lot of other keynote speakers and just very successful individuals speak this. They stop chasing success and they start chasing their definition of happiness. And for you, that seems to be a sense of peace, a sense of connection, a sense of consistency, as you just mentioned. Have you always felt this way? Like when you were growing up, was there always some part of you that was just like, man, I know I'm different. Like I know I'm supposed to lead. I know I'm supposed to be more. Even when things get chaotic, even when I do get rejected, there's always this sense of me that wants to be show up every day and just be the best
So
version
yeah,
of self.
it's going to sound weird or maybe not, but I've always felt like it was my place in life to do something big. I've always felt like I wanted to be different than everybody else. I don't really remember the first time, but I do know that there were some people in my life who I looked at and I decided that I admire these people. I make my choices based on what that's going to do for others. I've always been a man for others and I've always had impact on my mind. Leadership has come very, what feels like naturally to me. I don't believe that there are natural born leaders, but I do believe that you can either accept it or reject the opportunities when you can have influence on people. And I tend to lean into those. And so my goal is not to be a leader so that I can be liked, a leader so that I can be known. My goal and everything that I do is always leadership for impact. I've always been a servant. I always want to help people. I always want to do something for someone else. That's a part of my internal makeup. That's a part of what makes every day great for me. The opportunity to do something as small as open a door for someone or let someone go in traffic. Sometimes I'm the random act of kindness guy. Those are the things that make me feel full. And if you start chasing those moments, that's where you get your fulfillment come from. The moments where you feel full. That's also where your mental health comes in. Where you feel full, then you don't operate from that empty space, which is where we get some of the more triggered reactions that we do. When you, for example, if you get an A on the test, if you just won the championship, if you just had an amazing workout, if you and your girlfriend have a really great conversation, you feel more connected with her than you ever have. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, or if one bad thing happens to you, it's, or I shouldn't say bad, one unwanted thing happens to you, you're going to be okay. It's about the stack. The stack is really high, but it's those moments when the stack is low that the things that are near the bottom can have the biggest impact on our emotional and mental well-being.
Yeah, and again, back to your architecture reference at the beginning. The top of the building gets to look pretty and
That's right.
beautiful because of the solid base. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's always a good place to start, right? I know every home doesn't have it, but here in rainy, snowy New York, we got basements. And if your basement isn't strong or if your basement is flooded, it ruins the rest of your mood for your day. It ruins the rest of the mood for your house, if you will. I'm wondering too, one of your more well known quotes, because everyone seems to love to take photos of you giving your speeches and post them all over social media and really, really get you hyped up, is you were born an original, don't live a copy. I think we all interpret that our own way, but I want to know what that means to you.
Yeah, that's my closing line in every presentation. So I'm going to take this into a place I didn't expect, but for you, I'll do it. I grew up since I was 8 years old watching professional wrestling, WWF at the time. I'm talking about Hulk Hogan and Junkyard Dog and the British Bulldogs. But one thing I noticed was that all of them had a tagline. And the bigger wrestling got, the more it was important for people to have their tagline because Stone Cold says so. The Rock had his line where he would say, he had a ton of lines that he would use. You know, it doesn't matter what your name is. All these things that the whole crowd would be able to say. I said, well, what's my tagline? What can I do? I said, you know, what represents who I am? And for me, authenticity was so important that I said, I'm going to make that a part of every talk. You were born an original, so don't live like a copy. If we could focus on that, if we could just live like that every day, focus on how you are as an authentic original and how you feel, that would give us permission to tell people things that we otherwise would hold back. That would give us permission to say, wait, I'm an original. I don't have to look like or be like somebody else. I don't have to get their permission to say this. That gives you the opportunity and the license and the authority to say, I miss you. I really like our relationship. I like how I feel around you. That really hurt me. I'm not feeling well right now. I need help. All of the things that I said, some of them, as we know, are a little easier than others to say, but all the things that we say are only things that come from people who have high self esteem because you trust yourself enough to put yourself out there and be vulnerable. You have to be able to be willing to put yourself out there in order to get the help that you need. And I always say, asking for help is the sign of high self esteem.
Yeah, and this might be, again, going a totally different direction than we expected, but I'm curious. If you can't tell, I'm always very curious. That's one of the things that fills my cup recently is just wanting to understand more where people come from and what makes them tick and what makes them them. And it's clear that authenticity and honesty, integrity, all those, they're very high morals for you. And it's not it's not a trick. It's not a science, if you will. It's clear that you do try to live by those every day, even when you stumble and fall, you build yourself back up. But I'm curious, outside of one of the many hats you wear, outside of public speaking, outside of coaching, outside of connecting, what fills your cup? Because one of the terms I've become recently aware of is subjective vitality, and it's the state of feeling alive and alert and the ability to give yourself or to make energy available to yourself. And I think so many times, especially in your line of work and a lot of line of work of the student athletes, right, where we're playing well for the success of the team, unless you're in an individual sport. But even so, you're playing well for something bigger. How do you, or what fills your cup so that you can have this subjective vitality, so you can have this energy available?
Interesting that you asked that. Every single morning, I have a ritual. Before I get out of bed, I turn my alarm off, and then I will put my hands down by my side. I'll close my eyes, and I'll utilize the power of smiling because when you smile, your brain releases a dopamine hormone that allows you to feel happy. So within the first 30 seconds of me being awake, I want to feel happy, and I want to start looking at what I could be not only excited about, but what am I most grateful for. So the first thing I do is I think about my wins from the day before. You'll be one of them, by the way, for tomorrow morning. Something that happened that made me really happy, something that brings me joy. Again, what you focus on is what you see. They talk about it in the happiness advantage. You start scanning. Your brain starts to scan for what you want, and you find it. So I always look for my thing. What was something that did it for me? What really brings me joy is, finding finding joy and looking for joy in every day. What brings me joy is creating. When I can create something, that brings me joy. Sometimes that'll be in the form of with my words. Sometimes it'll be in a creative outlet. I work with my designer. I have great ideas, but I don't know how to physically do them. And my designer can bring some of those things to life. Helping people brings me joy. I'm a learner. I'm a passionate learner. So I'm a big audiobook person. I love to listen to audiobooks now. I don't remember the last time I picked up a physical book. So that brings me joy. Being a dad brings me joy, and watching my son develop into a young man. Regardless of what sport he's playing, I am his primary coach. I had to learn track and field. I had to learn a lot of those things that I knew nothing about. So I'll sit and watch YouTube videos during the day. So I'll sit there and I pretend like I knew what I was talking about that evening when we do a training session. And then I also like to work on my body as well. So I believe that your physical health and your mental health are directly linked. It's hard to have one without the other, right? There's going to be some inconsistency in one if there is inconsistency in the other. So those things all bring me joy.
Yeah, I love it. And I always find it super rewarding when people bring up their family and you just see the smile on their face. Everything you listed, apart from talking about your son, there was just a different smile. You could just see it in your eyes when you started to talk about him and learning for him, and again fulfilling your I mean, obviously your role as a father, but as a someone who loves to produce just joy and connection, and you get to do it with someone who means, I'm gonna assume here, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, that means the most to you in this world at this moment in time. If you can get those people in your life the joy that you're so desperately want to, that, I mean, that has to fill your cup.
Yeah. So this is going to be very unexpected. Okay. And this works for me. I'm really clear about this. I had a great relationship with my father. My father was still to this day the closest relationship I've ever had. He checked all the boxes for me. He wasn't just my father, he was my mentor, my role model, and my soulmate. We could finish each other's sentences. It was just all I remember is the good times. I know that there were some crazy times because I was about almost a teenager when it was when he got a little older and got sick. But I know that I was a little sideways sometimes. But I remember the great times though. My dad was the best relationship I've ever had, and that inspired me to be a great dad. That inspired me to want to figure out what I could do to be a better father and be the father to my child that my father was to me. And here's what I found out: I can't be that dad because we're different people. I'm a different dad than him. My son is a different son than I. We're grown up in different times. He has a different personality. So, this is why I say this is going to be very unexpected. You say he means the most to me. He means a lot to me. I mean the most to me. I do things for me so that I can also pour out to him. But this is one thing that a lot of high performers oftentimes do. And I believe that we do it in error. We say, well, go do it for these people. Go do it for the coach. Go make, someone would tell me, hey, go make me proud. Hey, go make us all proud. No, make yourself proud. Go do it because you're the one who has to sit down and do those push-ups. You're the one who has to do those squats. You have to run those lines in the snow, in the heat. You're the one who has to watch the film and get it right. Do it for yourself. And the only reason why we feel challenged to do it for ourselves is because we haven't taught ourselves to love ourselves and to value ourselves. So what we have to do is supplant that with someone else. We'll do it for somebody who you have no conflict with loving. No, no. Learn how to love you. Learn how to love you so much that you fall in love with you and you understand that, look, yeah, I may have pimples on my face. Yep, sometimes my breath stinks in the morning. Sometimes I make crazy mistakes. Sometimes I have to pee on the side of the road when I'm listening to an audiobook. Sometimes I say the wrong word and it comes out. All these things happen, and that's me. That's beautifully me. And I do crazy things. Look, I just ran my 20th half marathon. I did a mile by mile video recap. From mile 7 through 10, I had snot coming out of my nose because I had a cold. So I'm up here blowing snot rockets, and I'm like, okay, mile 7. I didn't realize until the time. Look, okay. That's part of being beautifully human. Being beautifully human means that you are both blessed and broken at the same time. Okay. So the only thing different is that you will do some things in public that other people do in private. But that's also your life. And for what I've really discovered, this is what sets me free, Caleb. Those who mind don't matter. And those who matter don't mind. That's the simple truth. We invest so much time in worrying about people who just don't matter. And we overlook and devalue those who love us most, who don't even mind.
Salt City Vintage, where nostalgia meets style. Salt City Vintage is a treasure trove of unique and timeless pieces that will elevate your wardrobe. Salt City Vintage believes in the power of fashion to evoke emotions and memories. They don't just sell clothes, they provide a sense of nostalgia and comfort to their customers. So, whether you're looking for that perfect vintage band tee or a statement jacket, come visit Salt City Vintage on Instagram or at any of their pop-up locations to experience the magic of retro fashion. That was unexpected, but it was definitely, again, I'm a broken record here, beautifully said. I need one of those buttons. Like, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan, every time you say something. But I think a lot of what you touched on here before we move into the final part of the episode here, I could sit here and talk to you for days and hours, but we know you have other responsibilities. A lot of that boils down to interpersonal relationships and the 4 different types of those: the family relationships, the friendships, just pure acquaintances, but then also the romantic relationships, both like partner wise, but also with your children or with your parents, right? A lot of that, we spend so much time trying to fulfill our interpersonal relationships with other people that we forget to fulfill our personal relationship. And I think that's partially where you were going with that, is like, in order to be the best father for your son, you have to be the best you first. You have to do those push-ups and hope he sees you doing them and wants to do them one day. Or you can show him that it's okay to start push-ups on your knees if that's what you're capable of. Or, I don't know, a negative trait that you might possess. He sees it and he says, first off, let me see dad's map. Why is dad doing this? Second off, how can I take a different route on dad's map, right? Not necessarily not be you, just take a different route. And I think, again, there is so much more we could spend in this topic, but for the purposes of time and retention of all the wonderful things you just shared with us, again, so much more in his audiobook. And I can't stress enough, if there is one book to listen to, not to read, to listen to for your rest of your year, but honestly, I would revisit it every year, because Jonathan revisited it 10 years later. It's the least we can do, is just get off your butt and make it happen. But I want to open the floor to you, as I do for all of our guests, to just share whatever you feel you need to, if anything. Maybe you said what you've came here to say today, got your point across, but before we move into the end of the episode where I ask my final question, I want to open the floor to you.
Sure. Well, we've talked about a lot over the time in which we've been together. The real question is what and why? What's resonated with you and why? What are those thoughts that you have been thinking in the back of your head What were those moments when you said, "Oh my gosh, I feel like he's talking to me," or "I was just dealing with this the other day"? And then why is that resonating deep within? High performers have a very unique makeup. We are a different kind of individual. And so know this, most of the things that you do or most of the people you study, you're going to be wasting your time unless you study high performing people. You're going to waste your time on norms and trends and things that other people are doing. You're not meant to be that way. You're meant to be a different type of person entirely. You're the one who doesn't follow the trends, you're the one that creates the trends. You're the one who is meant to be an influencer, not the influenced. And so, what that means is that you're a trailblazer and that you are somebody who is intended to not be influenced by what others are doing. And in order for you to do that, you've got to turn this thing around and start thinking about yourself differently. You've got to learn how to take care of yourself. You've got to love you. As one person said a long time ago, UGLY. You've got to love yourself. You got to do it even when it's ugly. You got to love your ugly. You got to love those things that make you who you are. This is one thing I love to talk about, especially with student athletes. Nobody else can do what you do. If you think about it, you are living the dream. At some point, Caleb brought it up, 10 years, 15, some people 20 years ago, at one point, it would have been a dream to one day wear somebody else's uniform on your chest or whatever your sport might be. To have a college or university actually say, I choose you, and we will, in some kind of way, pay for or support you being here, and you get to go on another level. You get to be a collegiate athlete. Are you kidding me? You know how small and narrow that group is of people? You got to love yourself. You got to love the journey that you've been through. You got to love that you could do what most people can't. You've got to love that you have made sacrifices that most others won't, that your life is not the same. But what it will do is give you a life that will not be like anyone else's in the future. And all the things that you've learned, all the things that you've done, all the lessons, all of the conversations, all of the gym time, all of the practices, all of the losses, all of the journey that has brought you here, it has taught you one thing and one thing only. You're born an original, so don't live like a copy.
I might just end the episode right there. I might not even ask the last question. No, I'm kidding. I love, again, beautifully said. I'm desperately going to get a button. So next time I have the privilege of speaking with you, I'm just going to, before even talking, be like, Jonathan, hold up. Jonathan said it. But seriously, I want to take the time quickly to thank you for myself to you for the willingness to just be here, and just answer the questions that I've wanted to ask you for so long. From what, 2 years ago, I think was the first time we crossed paths, and even that was unexpected. But in listening to your book, I noticed I have a long way to go in my self discovery journey and my ability to get off my butt quite literally after my 9 to 5 job and make it happen, but also to go above the moment, as you put it, and realize that I have been doing it since that career in sport forum. I'll shout out the NCAA really quick. That career in sport forum, I got off my butt, asked my athletic director. I said, I want to do something with sports when I am done with college athletics beyond coaching. And I still coach, but beyond coaching, what can I do? And she was gracious and she said, fill this application out. I could have said, oh, okay, whatever, not filled it out, forgot about it. I filled it out, got off my butt. Time number 2, after I asked the question, I took the action. Time number 3, I actually accepted the invitation, right? Some of those uncontrollables, I was at the mercy of the people selecting the applications. Once that happened again, I noticed, I was like, I can't let this opportunity turn. I showed up. I could have sat there. I could have just existed in the room. I could have adjusted to the temperature. Another one of your little taglines there. Don't sue me for throwing them all out here, but no, I started to adjust the temperature, to change the temperature of the room. And every time I use that quote, I do shout you out. So we'll have to get you some sort of royalty. But I took the time to really understand that I am capable of doing these things, and I didn't notice it, right? It was that awareness piece on the positive end, because like you said, there's so many times where people who hold themselves to super high standards, whatever that means for each individual listening, we forget what we've already done because we are so busy looking for the next project, for the next thing, for the next accomplishment. We are so busy we are we're caught in the chase that we don't even realize what we've already done. So not only will listening to this audiobook help you get off your butt and make it happen, it might just spark moments for you where you've already done it and can celebrate yourself and can appreciate that ugly, as Jonathan referenced. Um, so I appreciate it in that sense. We are definitely going to put the audiobook below, but you can also find him on Instagram. Jonathan, do you want to tell us where else we can find you before I ask
Sure.
the
The two
final
places that
question
I
of
play
this
most
episode?
are Instagram and LinkedIn. Instagram is the behind the scenes. You get to see all the stuff. LinkedIn is where we put on our nice clothes and act like grown-ups.
And is it Jonathan
You could
Sprinkles
just
on
look
both?
up my name. Trust me. With a name like Jonathan Sprinkles, trust me, I'm the only one.
And that is your real name. So many people are asking
Dude,
me this, and
do
I'm
you
like,
think
I'm
I would do
thinking
that to
so. I'm
myself?
not thinking. No, I love it, and again, it goes to show you like that's just authentically you, right? It's not a stage name. It is you, and you've embraced it. And honestly, I think it's awesome. It is. It's the star in the making.
Oh, thank you.
So we love your name. Side note, I will ask the final question of this
Sure.
episode. Jonathan, are you ready? If there is one person that you hope has made it this far into the episode and listen to your wisdom, everything you've had to say, that you personally think just needs a warm hug, and I know you referenced this earlier, it's the feeling that your book wanted, but now in this current moment, who would you give that hug to and why?
Are we talking about a listener right now? One of your people who are
Whoever you want in your life. But I'm hoping, one, there's multiple reasons behind this question. One, I'm curious to see who you give your hug to. Two, I'm hoping that you genuinely give this person a hug, but then maybe send the episode to them as a subtle way of letting them know that you're thinking about them. Maybe you haven't talked to them in a while. Just whoever comes to your mind that you want to listen to this episode
so
and
rather
needs a
than
hug.
speaking about one specific person, I'm going to talk about a type of person. The person who has been working hard, busting their butt, the person who a lot of times when you do well, people say, "Oh, but you knew that already." People say, "Well, I'm sure you hear this all the time," but the person who works so hard and supports so many other people shows up for others, even though others don't always show up for them on that same level. The person who is to some so successful and yet feels so unseen, even lonely sometimes, where you feel success isn't what you thought it was cracked up to be. And you might be asking yourself, is this even worth it? Those people are the ones who I love most because you're the most sincere. And here's why I say you're the most sincere, because you really do want to succeed for something other than just the accolades that you get, more than just the props that the world will give you. You really want to succeed because you want to have a bigger impact, and you don't even realize how much the connection to other people matters to you. Those are the people who I want to give that hug to. I want you to know that you're not alone. Number two, there's nothing wrong with you for feeling that way. And that everything, not some, not most, not kind of, I mean everything in your life, the best thing in your life, and the worst thing in your life, it's working together for your good. The things that you've experienced and the things that you're even going through right now is life's crazy, strange way of making you an expert. And what you don't know yet is that you're going to one day reach back and take these exact chapters of your life the feelings, the experiences, the details, that I remember exactly where I was on this road at that moment. And you're going to turn around and use that to serve somebody else. And somebody's going to say, how did you know? How can you speak so specifically? How can you tell me these things? It's like you've been watching me. You say, nope, I get you because I am you. And that's going to change around someone's life. So I want you to understand really clearly that everything in your life is working together for your good. And you will see that one day, whether it makes sense right now or not. Just know you will see it one day. If you plant a seed and then go look at the place where you buried it the next day, you won't see anything. The only one that knows that that seed is eventually going to become something is the one who planted that seed and the one who waters that seed continuously, knowing that the promise of that seed after it goes down is that it will grow up really strong. And everything, not some, not most, everything is working together for your good.
I hope you felt that hug. I mean, I like to feel like I felt that hug in a few of the sentences he spoke there. So I appreciate the hug from you, Jonathan. But it is not a coincidence if you made it this far, if you even found the episode and heard this message. Even if you fast forward to the end, you were supposed to hear that message from Mr. Sprinkles at this moment in time in your life. The choice is up to you with what you're going to do with it. Are you going to continue to water that seed? Are you going to continue to get off your butt and make it happen? Or is this a moment in your life where you just need to embrace the hug and really feel the wise words of Mr. Jonathan Sprinkles? So, one last time, from the bottom of my heart, and I know all the listeners, Jonathan, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Finally, we did it.